Like groups of 2 or 3 players have tended to do much better together in certain positions.
Oh, so how did you find that? Was it like something you found, or you kind of put that
I've
together
got this
yourself?
really fancy algorithm that just auto searches. No, it's I pulled up 3 tabs and I just started comparing stuff.
Just like 3 lineups that you found that had the same guys doing certain things.
I've been tracking some of them. So like I've been
Mm-hmm.
tracking Akil, Yarrow, AZ, and Sam,
Mm.
and it's gotten to the point now where like I know we're recording the pod and stuff, but like we're really good with Akil, Yarrow, and AZ in certain positions, like really good.
Yeah, like you were kind of tweeting about. Well, that's cool. You've got some data to back that up. What's up, Stu?
Hey guys, sorry, I'm trying to get my audio set up.
You're good, man.
All good.
Hey Baker, sorry for being an ass with the Arsenal comment. That was kind of a dick move on my part. I meant to be a little bit of a jerk. But
I was like, this. I know this game's going poor, but I'm catching strays over here.
I know. I mean, I don't care for Arsenal because of Kroenke, but otherwise,
sure.
I don't really care. And I like Saka as a player.
Yeah, I totally
anyway,
get what you meant.
Sorry about that. That was not cool.
You're good. I knew exactly where your mind was when you said that, because I got the alert at that point in the game, and I was like, yeah, this makes sense.
Who
Stu, we are live. I should have told you that first thing.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no. So I was talking a little bit of trash with Baker on about an Arsenal. Who was the Dallas player who kind of did the he grabbed, I think, was it Yarrow's arm and spun him around?
Probably Obrian. He was a total ass the whole time.
Yeah,
maybe Obrian. Yep. He was. Oh, gosh, this had to be. It was still fairly early in the game, right? First half.
Yeah, he did most of his damage in the first half. That guy did.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, I talked some trash on Arsenal, particularly because I knew Matt was such a big Arsenal fan. So that's the inner workings of my DM chat life.
You did say it was an Arsenal move. What? I wasn't sure if it was, what was the Arsenal thing. I don't watch hardly any Premier League other than some Fulham here and there, so I don't even know what Arsenal's
okay,
like.
So yeah, Fulham played Arsenal at the Emirates last Saturday, and Saka was going for a ball in the Fulham half, and he grabbed the Fulham defender Calvin Bassey's arm in an arm bar and kind of threw him to the ground near the end line, near the goal. And Bassey was down hurt, and basically being down hurt, he played onside Eddie Nketiah.
Oh my god!
Is that how you pronounce it, Matt?
Yeah,
so bad with names. Nketiah, who scored. Though by laws of the game, Fulham Lino did play on instead of kicking the ball out. So It's more of just Fulham should have kicked the ball out so their player could recover. But I will always find fault for things for other teams to not own responsibility of my team making any sort of mistakes.
That's always fair.
Yeah, I mean, I lose all control during City games. My voice is gone from screaming mostly at Obrian. That dude was so ridiculous. I was just screaming at him to get up. It worked out well though, because I screamed at him to stand back up when he was like diving. It wasn't too bad of a dive, but it was bad enough to yell at him. And then like 10 minutes later, he was pissed because one of our guys was laying on the ground too long. And so I screamed at him about that. Worked out. I think our section is known as the screaming section in our area.
Oh, nice. That's a good reputation to have.
Yeah, like some people come and absolutely hate us, and we just do our thing. Hopefully, people get word out so they don't sit in front of us.
You get a reputation for yourself.
Get our kind of people around us, yeah. We got lucky. We have someone in front of us loves it, and they like join in. So that's really. Andy's a referee, so I get really good referee stuff. He called. So you know that yellow that was like they shouldn't have reviewed in that last game, not Dallas, but the one before.
Oh, yeah, where it was a yellow on Orlando, right?
Yeah.
And
then they reviewed it and took it away or something. He was like,
that was Austin, right?
Oh, it was Austin. You're right.
Oh, it was the identity one, the mistaken identity one, or whatever.
Yeah. Thank you. So that one, he called it in the moment. He was like, "They're not supposed to review that. What are they doing?" And we like argued about like what on earth could they be doing?
Yeah, and why?
And he said it like 5 seconds after they started reviewing it. So that guy should probably be employed by Pro. He did better than the guys on the field. Easy to say from the seats. Okay, I should stop talking though. Are you guys good to go?
Yeah, like I said, it's all winging it at this point.
I'm actually thinking about how I'm going to intro because it is going to be a little different, but I'll make it quick.
I mean, you can
throw to you guys.
Yeah, I put the work on myself for cutting this one, so you can do whatever you want.
I know. You know what? I meant to say that too. Like, I do not envy what you're putting yourself into tonight with the edits.
I mean, it might all go to shit, and it might end up sounding absolutely terrible on both podcast and radios. You never know.
Well, to be fair, like luckily it is like lots of commercials, so I don't even think it's going to be a big deal at all.
That's fair.
They're going to break it up on top of whatever you break up. So, although they do a good job, I've listened to it like once or twice, like after, like really carefully. And like
the KTRS part,
yeah, like I don't always notice what they change, you know, and I know he's cutting stuff out. So
I listened to it once and I genuinely didn't think they cut anything out. And I know they had to because we were like a little bit over that week.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty impressive.
Yep. Or we're just, you know, we have forgettable comments. That is probably the answer.
That's just as likely, to be fair.
All right. You guys ready? Here, as ready as we'll ever be?
You know it.
Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. We have a bit of a different show today. It's going to be more like the Flyover Footies of the past, bit of a traditional one today. It's going to be pretty free form, free flowing. We're going to talk about 3 different things today rather than what we normally do, which is this show normally airs an hour before the game. We get you ready for the game. We prepare you for whatever opponent St. Louis is facing. Well, today it's going to be a little more free and easy. So I hope you enjoy that. And, you know, while I'm saying it, you know, you can always check out our podcast. And so we have other shows kind of like this if you do like it. So please do that if you are willing and able. But, you know, let's move on with the show here. We have Matt Baker and we have Stuart Holtgren joining us tonight. Matt, how's it going?
Great. I'm excited for what's to come. I'm excited coming off 3 points. FC Dallas was one of the most untraditional games we've ever played and maybe will ever play in the sense of how it unfolded, which is slightly bizarre. But, you know, I'm excited to go to Kansas City. My family's coming with me. We're going to make a weekend of it. We're going to the current game. We're going to the city game. I started my first week of coaching first grade girls soccer this week tonight. So I'm kind of riding high on the whole soccer vibe right now.
It sounds like you're having the time of your life, Matt. Those are all really nice things, especially going to Kansas City, coaching your little girls soccer team. Life is good here in St. Louis. Stuart, I imagine you agree after the result, but it was a little stressful. How's your week been, and what are you up to this weekend?
Well, I'll be in Kansas City, but anyone who stays behind should go see the Bronze Boot match at City Park, SIUE versus SLU. Big traditional rivalry for the area, if you're not aware. No, I mean, I'm doing pretty well today. Feeling a little sheepish that I ever doubted Carnell and the boys, but you know, I'm wrong more often than not. So, it's, you know, 3 points is 3 points, even if it's an ugly game, and you know, good teams win bad games. So, riding high.
To be fair, there's no way you were the only one thinking those thoughts that night, Stuart. That was a wild game, and the team's hand was forced. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but I do want to re-endorse this Bronze Boot matchup between SLU and SIUE. It's so cool they're going to put it in City Park. And, when they announced the date of that, I was so sad that, yes, I'll be in Kansas City as well. So it'll be cool to run into you guys in the 60% of the attendance that is going to be St. Louis in that stadium. Supposedly, who knows if that's true. But it's going to be a fun night no matter what happens. But let's dig into it, boys. Let's dig into not that game. We're going to talk about what happened in Dallas, or not in Dallas, playing Dallas, pardon me. And wild game. I think Matt should get us started with some of your thoughts on that game. I don't know if you want to talk about the lineup or not. It almost doesn't matter because it got so crazy.
Yeah, but I do like to start there. And so I've muscle memory from when Santi and I do Flyover Fallout. I always love to start with the lineups because it sets the stage so well, even if everything came off the rails like 12 minutes into the game. Mm-hmm. So starting with this lineup, having Kyle Hiebert, Tim Parker, Josh Yaro, and Akil Watts in the back line. No real surprises there. I think we were all kind of hoping to see Joakim Nilsson, but this to me foreshadows more than anything his likely availability to start against Sporting Kansas City. So I was not displeased to see him not in the starting lineup. Having Leuven and Blom in the midfield made a whole lot of sense to me. You have AZ Jackson there at the 10, Jared Stroud, Rasmus Alm on the wings, and Sam Adeniran starting up front. No real surprises to me. And I thought this was a very strong lineup. And I thought this was, I was challenged at this on Twitter, calling this a strong lineup, primarily because apparently there's an opinion that Josh Yaro and Akil Watts don't play well together or haven't had a good run of form lately when they're together in the lineup or something along those lines. And so instinctually, I just thought that was a bad take. And so I looked into it, and it turns out that in games where Josh Yaro and Akil Watts have started together at the center back and right back and toss in AZ Jackson because he's been with them each time, we were coming into this game 5-0. And so it's Akil Watts at that right back position that is extremely strong, and he's really settled into that spot to me as a great tactical option, pushing forward as well as playing defense, more of a wing back if you were looking at it than anything. And if you look at our shape of the way this starting 11 operated, at least early on, but even in the past few games where Hiebert stayed at the left back role, we tend to be, Carnell referenced this a few times as asymmetrical. And so we often talk about the passing network on Fallout, and the asymmetrical shape. What that means is in the offensive possessions and offensive looks, we tend to push Akil Watts very high and shift over Kyle Hiebert to be a more left center back. And Jared Stroud tends to take up a left wing back role if you're looking at the shape, the way we push forward. I find that really fascinating, and I see a lot of good things, especially hearkening back to our desire to see a 3 center back look early in the season. I don't think people realize that we've been seeing that pretty consistently for the past couple of games.
It is consistent. And even when I see Hiebert stay back, I start trying to find a formation outside of the 3 center backs. And it's pretty difficult. The rotation is very fluid. And, that's something I've been wanting to nail down. And I haven't taken the time to really watch carefully because I get too excited about what's going on. But that's a really fun one to watch. I encourage everybody to kind of figure that out. Maybe it's something we could all have a call-in show and kind of give our ideas or throw out our lineups for the 3 center back formations when it happens in the attack. Stuart, what did you think about the lineup? Is there anything other than the lineup if you'd like to stray talking about the first, little bit of this game here?
I thought the lineup was as strong as we could have put out. Or just about as strong. Obviously Klaus and maybe Nielsen, but you can't drop Yaro or Watts at this point. We're just too solid without him. Watts is our first choice right back at this point. I was going to ask you, Matt, actually, will our asymmetrical shape shift once Markovic takes in? Are we going to be more symmetrical, or will we kind of, do you think?
I think it has to shift. I think, and that we saw it in the second half. So not to get too ahead of ourselves, I think that's what it looks like. Not too dissimilar from how Nelson and Nerwinski played when they were playing well together at the beginning of the year, and we were on the win streak. That's the kind of look that I expect when Marcanic actually starts to get more minutes, which I am a big fan of, especially given his limited minutes the past 2 games. I think he's a difference maker. He inserts himself near the ball, good or bad, he inserts himself. and he tends to make things happen. Whether it's usually higher up on the field, which is something notable to me in that the 2 appearances he's been a very attacking minded left back, a very different look than Kyle Hebert, and that does provide the change of pace that is often needed in these second half subs. So you're looking to make tactical adjustments to not just how the game flow is going, but this is a really interesting look, taking Kyle Hebert out and putting in Anthony Marcanic because of how different their styles are and what they're comfortable with. Hebert, obviously, when I mentioned, often drops back as a left center back, very defensive minded. He comes from a center back home. That's his bread and butter. We know that. We know the story of how he hasn't played left back until he was needed to this year against Sporting Kansas City the first time, mind you. And so having Marcanic in there can kind of even and make it more symmetrical, where you do have 2 attacking fullbacks as opposed to a wing back and pulling your left mid down a little bit. The interesting thing I saw that we did last night, and I know we were up a man, but the way that our shape shifted into Jabulu Blom dropping back into the right center back role. Did you guys notice that, the way it progressed? And I think that is where there's a real opportunity as we look at Anthony Marcanic in how he can make a difference. So whether it's 2 attacking fullbacks or however Marcanic actually ends up being employed, the importance of Jabulu Blom is going to be magnified just exponentially, because if you push ahead now both of your fullbacks, you're going to need that extra defender at some point, whether it's dropping back centrally or dropping back to the right side, where he's more strong, Jabulu Blom. He is going to be so much more important beyond how his regular importance is in controlling the pace of the ball on both sides, offensively and defensively, in being the stopper and just stopping every attack from coming through. His role can be more versatile the way that we change up our fullback looks.
Yeah, and he might have also been a placeholder for a full-on 3 center back setup. A placeholder for Nilsson, one of Nilsson, Hebert, or Parker, if we were to go to that sort of move, which would probably have more traditional wing backs, even if it was a starting 11. That was, we've seen Carnell. I don't disagree with you, Matt, but I do just want to say that it is possible that he was just a placeholder in that situation, because we've seen Carnell, once he needs to start making changes, he'll just throw anything at the wall in a way, just throwing people in weird positions. And we saw a little bit of that at the end with Blom and, of course, Alm, and we'll talk about that kind of stuff. But I think we should rewind a little bit, because we are going to circle back. It's going to be a perfect way to close up this Dallas conversation. STL City Italians asked a great question on Twitter, and I think we'll circle back to all of these kind of mentions and these questions here at the end. But I do want to get to the red card, the first red card, I should say. Matt, do you want to lead us into that and kind of transition us into the next part of the conversation here?
Yeah, I mean, just what can you really say about the red card? First of all, it changed the entire course of play, and everything that had started was thrown out the window as soon as that happened. And I find that it was fascinating how it was thrown out the window. But all credit in the world to Rasmus Alm. Mm-hmm. Rasmus Alm is the player who forced this red card to happen, and it was a boneheaded move by Pace. It was a terrible decision to come out of the box. It was a terrible decision to put himself in harm's way. If he's going to come out of the box, then you dive with your feet, you clear the ball. It was just awful decision, and I think they paid the price for it. But Rasmus Alm, we talk on this show so much about push points, about smart pressing, because this team, and Carnell has said it, cannot be an all-out pressing team. You cannot be pressing every single moment of the entire game, because you're going to wear yourself out and you won't be able to make any type of tactical plays later on offensively. Like, you're just going to wear yourself out. It's not going to work. And that's how teams like St. Louis City with their high octane styles often peter out later on in the season, in the hot months. And that's what we were exactly concerned about with our style of play is July, August. Can we maintain that in the St. Louis summer heat? And the reason we can maintain it is by being smart with our push points, being very selective on when to press. We've seen it consistently from Nico Gioacchini here in the past few months of he doesn't press all the time, but when he does, it's followed up immediately by his wingers, those behind him, the attacking mid, AZ Jackson, Rasmus Alm, Jared Stroud. They make a corresponding move to cut off a line of sight or a line of passing. And what Rasmus Alm did here is he saw a moment and he saw an opportunity where the ball was being passed back. It was in open space, didn't have the pace to it to really make anybody effective in receiving the ball, and he pounced on it. And when he reached the point where it was Alm v keeper in the open space, he was just forcing bad decisions. And the bad decisions previously had been like back passes, but this bad decision was a handball outside the box, and it changed everything.
It did change everything. Stuart, what did you see following that red card from City? I know this is kind of the hot zone of starting to get pretty frustrated, right?
Well, I mean, they parked the bus for 78 minutes of the match. You could
threw away the keys.
Yeah, you could tell that they were really they changed up the game plan first. But also I found it really kind of funny that Dallas players confronted the ref and wanted to appeal that red card. I mean, it's the rules pretty cut and dry on that one. You handle the box or the ball outside of the box as a goalkeeper, you're red card. I mean, getting sent off. It was frustrating not being able to break through, and I thought it was one thing we were pretty poor on that normally we're very good on was our set pieces. Our ball deliveries were pretty off. Way too many that went over the head of everyone really and past the far post. Just such a frustrating game to watch. And if we're frustrated, I can only imagine how frustrated all the guys playing were.
And I think I agree. I think it has to be said too, the time wasting in the first half was rampant, and it was without penalty from the referee. I think that's notable. Just want to note that for now because I do think it'll come up later. Matt, any other thoughts about the first half, the lineup, the changes that were made?
Yeah, I mean, the Dallas parking the bus, they brought 5 to the back consistently. And when I say to the back, I mean as deep as humanly possible. And the 3 in front of them, so 3 midfielders, and then kind of just you could call him an attacker, you could just call him a floater. But the way that they were consistent in that prevented a lot of connection to Sam Adeniran. I found myself being disappointed in Sam in the first half, but then I caught myself because when I said that this changed up everything, I mean that it changed up everybody's abilities to do what they like to do best. And I think this could have been a really fun, interesting game had the red card not occurred. I didn't expect myself to be ruining the red card in the sense that it really threw us off for 82 minutes. But as the first half progressed, it was Sam Adeniran, it was AZ Jackson that I was really frustrated with because they couldn't find space. They couldn't find connections. My wife was sitting next to me, and she was just like really frustrated with Sam's inability to find clearances anywhere. And it was very notable. And I agreed because what Sam was usually adept at doing is hold up play, is finding himself in behind the lines and making those runs and being very quick. But with such a deep line, you're not going to find any opportunity to do that. And especially because Dallas forced us into possession, unlike any we had seen so far. There's a stat I've got at the end that will show about possession, but we possessed the ball in the first half, especially at least 2 times more than we've ever possessed it before. It was approaching 70%, and it was astronomical, and we didn't know how to create chances in that style of offense, and it was very abundant.
Yeah, I mean, the lineup that was chosen was not chosen for possession of the ball, breaking down a bus in the back, parked in the back. It wasn't. It was made to get turnovers, run forward, get behind the lines, like you were saying, Matt. And Dallas, I'm constantly surprised that more teams don't game plan against St. Louis. I know it's hard to just up and change everything about how you're going to play one team. But St. Louis struggles against, low block defenses like this. And so I think Dallas knew that and said, well, we lost a guy. Let's just, pile into the back and just see if we can get a draw out of this. And it was smart. And it almost worked. But it didn't. But, it took a while, right? Let's get into the second half. I think we finally see Obrian get a foul, a yellow card in the 46th minute pretty quickly. I'm seeing a bunch of yellow cards on the Dallas side. It almost felt like an adjustment from the referee. Farfan finally got the first time wasting yellow card, and I noticed
long overdue.
Yeah, and I noticed that Mar and other guys were wasting less time after that as well, even though Mar didn't have a yellow card. It was long overdue. The game would have been better and more enjoyable if he had given that card sooner, even in the first half. But that's, I'm not a referee. I don't know much about that. I'm just talking about my frustration. But, let's get into this. We didn't get another. Oh, no. At the half, we got 2 subs. Nukvi Thorsen and Markanek came in. Oh, 3 subs. And Vasilev for Stroud.
Too, yeah.
Pardon me.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those adjustments. Stuart, it's been a while for you. What do you think about those adjustments? Were they, I don't know, how'd you feel about them?
Well, I mean, anytime you're making subs at half, you're very much changing the strategy and the approach to the game. And I think everyone knew after not being able to break down Dallas for Red came in the 12th minute. So that's 30 minutes, 32 minutes. So, yeah, a change was needed, and I thought it was the right call. Obviously, very targeted that they were all on the left side that came out. So it was clear that I think Carnell wanted to shift that whole asymmetricalness and give some options on the left side. It was the right move. I loved it at the time. I still think it was the correct move to make. And obviously, Markanek is the hero of the day, along with Nukvi, who are, not to get ahead of ourselves, but they were our left-hand side subs.
What'd you think, Matt?
I thought it was good that they made the subs so early. I think a penchant of Carnell is to wait a little too long to make subs and to let guys find a rhythm in the second half and see if they can either change what they need to amongst themselves tactically or find a different rhythm or a consistent rhythm, maybe even keep the same. But this was I like to see this, and it was a very attacking-minded substitution. We talked about Markanek's attacking ability when he was with Creighton, I believe. It was he was one of the record-setting goal scorers. He is adept and familiar with scoring goals, and he's proven in 2 games with City that he lives on that attacking left wing, and he will find himself deep very often and impact the plays. Like I said, the other 2 changes, Sam Adeniran going out for Nukvi. I have, like I said, I don't want to harp on Sam too much because part of it definitely wasn't him. It was the situation he was being thrust into, wasn't working out. Carnell recognized that, got him out, also possibly saved him a little for Sporting Kansas City. And Thorsen got a half's worth of work. And so I enjoyed seeing more use of those 2 guys in addition to the overall change of look. And then I think Indiana coming in for Jared Stroud, it was more, I think that ended up being like setting you up for Indy owning the midfield later on when Jabulu Blom dropped back. This almost seemed to be like you're preparing yourself while still getting fresh legs and having a more creative player with the ball in the game for Jared Stroud. Because at this point, with FC Dallas having parked the bus, you're not needing that hard-nosed player to go and win the ball back from the opposing team. You're not needing that player to be really gutsy and just going 1v1 against the opponent, because that's not what's happening in the flow of the game. And so getting Jared Stroud off, which he's great at all of those keys, I made a whole lot of sense to me. And it also set up Indy, like I said, well for what would happen when later on in the game when Klaus came in. In general, I think these 3 were about as effective as anything else in the first half, at least for the first 30 minutes or so that they were in. And that's part of why I like to see this move so early, because I don't like the idea generally of if you need to make game-changing subs and you're needing them to make an impact to the game, then you get them in there in the 75th or 80th minute and you hope that they can take 10 minutes to do something. Well, these guys had a longer run out there. They were able to take an entire half and tactically flip everything on its head with what Stu said, making it a very symmetrical approach. you still have Akil Watts in the game at this point until the 71st minute. Now you have an attacking-minded Marcanic. You're able to have both wings as dangerous. This widens the field. It spreads out what FC Dallas has to defend. And when you're able to do that, even a 5-man back line is stretched a little thinner each time when you're pressuring them on the wings with Marcanic out there and Watts out there, and then having Alm and Thoresen roaming those wings as well. And then it eventually sets it up for what I think happened. What happened in the 82nd minute with Marcanic scoring, I think, is a direct result of all of these pieces adding up together and what FC Dallas was trying to defend against. And it was just the exclamation mark was Klaus coming in 71st minute and the respect that he's garnered and what he was drawing, because the replay was very clear that nobody was watching what Marcanic was doing because everybody was so wide and paying attention to Klaus and the ball. All of these things snowballed. So in retrospect, I think that this was a goal that was coming from the beginning of the second half, even though it definitely didn't feel like that in the moment.
Yeah, but we had a long way to go from that 46-minute triple sub to that goal. What is that? When did that goal come? The 82nd was, I agree with you. Everything you just said. And I just want to kind of review a couple things about the triple sub. Is that Marcanic replaced Hebert, who was kind of a stay-at-home left back. We become more of a normal 4-man back line with very attacking fullbacks. But with Vasilev coming on for Stroud and Thoresen coming on for Adeniran, we saw that Alm was starting to play striker, which I thought was an interesting choice. And I thought that the reason that happened was clearly Carnot was thinking Sam's not going to score in this environment. And I think he was putting his chips in the Alm category, and also saying that unfortunately we can't bring Klaus on at the half, because I think he would have if he could have, because Klaus was more made for this situation than maybe any other striker on the roster. But it was cool to see that Thoresen was kind of playing left as an attacker. It seemed like Jackson was still central with lots of freedom, but we saw Vasilev and we saw Leuven kind of play as these like semi-wide eights, almost as like attacking dual tens, looking like that, Greg Berhalter would kind of talk about earlier in his USMNT career. And so these guys are just like pushing pretty high. So we've got like almost like 5 guys, pushing around in and around the box, plus the wide players and Watts and Marcanic. And, mostly we just have Blom and 2 center backs to kind of catch any counter, which did catch up to us once or twice. But just to kind of frame a reference that I thought Carnell did exactly the right moves with what he was allowed to use in that moment. I wouldn't have done anything differently. I think it was cool that he did it in the beginning of the second half. And I do agree with you, Matt. I think you kind of said that they wore him down. And eventually once Klaus came in, I thought that's where we saw fruit of that labor, not to mention, lots and lots of shots coming close. I think my only frustration with those changes is that we were crossing into Alm like crazy, which is just not what you should do when someone like Rasmus Alm is your striker. And it was frustrating, but I think we saw that they were going for a lot of crazy shots, hoping for a rebound, because our guys were crashing the box every time, and we came close a couple times. So I preferred that to just banging our heads against the wall, doing a million crosses. It reminds me, I think it was the Portland game at home. We were doing that before City finally kind of scored at the end. It was just killing me. I couldn't take it anymore. But I've spoken a lot about that. Let's talk about what happens when Klaus comes in, Marcanic gets his goal. Ostrak comes in before that as well. This is the last little segment here. We got to kind of push through it so we can move on. But Stuart, let's start with you. What do you think about Klaus coming in, Ostrak coming in, and just like those two? Finally, we got those 2 goals there.
Well, my first thought was kind of a worrying thought in the back of my brain, wondering, well, why is he waiting so long to bring Klaus on? He's the obvious next sub to bring on. Like, is he not fully fit? Is he just being rested for Kansas City, which is understandable? Or is he on a minute restriction and he really has to wait until there? But I mean, you can see Klaus's impact on the Thoresen goal, where he has that incredible dummy. Now, do you guys think that dummy was intended
Yes.
or accidental?
Intended.
I hope it was. I think it was, but I'm like 60-40 on it, to be honest.
Well, in the reason, so I'll say the reason, I'll make my case, is if you look at the replay, when the ball was sent in, Klaus makes a quick look back. I mean, it was incredibly quick to see spacing, and I want to say he saw Marcanic behind him before he did anything. Now are we, to be clear, are we talking about the Marcanic goal, or are we talking about the Thorson goal?
The Thorson was the dummy, in my opinion.
Yeah, the Thorson was the dummy one. So the Marcanic one was the one where Klaus was just in the box as the only person. Rasmus Alm sent it up from a deep cross. The Thorson goal was the Edu Leuven cross from deeper towards midfield. And Klaus did the little heel flick pretend thing. And then Thorson caught it from behind. I think Marcanic just was in the right place at the right time.
I don't know what you think, Stuart.
Yeah,
but...
I'm watching it again right now, and I think it was absolutely intentional, and I just can't get enough of Nukvi's headband.
Oh yeah, I love how
It's
noticeable
fitting.
it is. It's perfect. But that
Silly dance.
It's very Royal Tenenbaums. It reminds me of that a little bit.
Oh yeah. Phenomenal. The thing I like about the Marcanic goal though is it so Klaus was the only one in the box, right? When Alm crossed this one over, Klaus was the only one in the box amongst, like, I want to say 6 Dallas defenders. And then out of nowhere, Marcanic, our left back, appears at the far post and knocks it in. They lost track of him clearly. Nobody on the Dallas line was actually looking for a player. They were all looking over at the ball. They were looking at Rasmus Alm. They were looking at those in front of him. It seemed like they were overconfident in the fact that they were at such a deep line and they had so many numbers back there that they felt they didn't need to worry about being exposed and having space found between them. And that's one of the things that I think St. Louis, when I said that I felt like it was a slow burn when I look back on it, what I mean is that they kind of were pulled a little further apart as the half went on. And so where they might have been tighter in the first half, definitely tighter in the first half. And then in the beginning of the second half, just the nature of the way Marcanic was able to play deep or higher in the attacking end moved the 5-man back line a little wider each time. And so they got to a point where they are wide enough where they still think that they have the numbers back there to control the space, and they didn't. And Marcanic was able to find a hole behind Klaus, behind 7 or 8 defenders back there. And it was a great cross in by Rasmus Alm. That was one of the things I love too, is one of my favorite stats from this game is the fact that coming into this game, we had been averaging 18 crosses per game. And in this game, we had 32 crosses. This is another thing where if you look at it, most of the crosses came later in the game. And I asked Roman Berkey today, or on the Thursday press conference, about, like, what do you do in these scenarios tactically, or things you see when we make such a big change to have a defensive-minded left back versus an attacking left back, or changing up the three-man back line to a 4 in the attack, or all these changes that occur on the back line and in the midfield. What do you do? And so he talked about the pace of play necessitated the fact that he didn't see too much action, but he did call out very loudly in the second half, we need to be crossing more. And I think that helps set up some of this, is the crosses help spread out the defense, and it gives our players opportunities to find space in behind, in on top of people. And so all these things combined, eventually, like if you throw a dart at a board enough times, eventually you're going to hit the target. And that seems like that's what happened between the shots, the crosses, and it just worked out for Marcanic finding himself in behind Klaus for the goal.
Yeah, and I do think it made a massive difference that Klaus came in, and I think it gave the defense more to worry about. You know, we see there were 6 guys in the box, and there was a 7th defender kind of pushing toward the ball, and I do think that deflection helped on the Marcanic goal, but you know, we saw 2 center backs on Klaus, and then Marcanic was able to take advantage of the right back kind of watching the deflection and not looking for a man. And he really capitalized on it. But I do, you know, as much as I was getting frustrated at all the crosses, once Klaus was in, it was kind of like, okay, we're on, the cross is on again. But either way, you know, Marcanic. I thought Thoresen these are kind of guys that can get those, just take advantage of a mess in the box. One deflection, one random ball falling to their feet, and they're able to kind of punish the defense on that. And we finally saw it in the 82nd minute there. And it didn't take long after that for the 85th minute goal. It was Thoresen on his assist from Leuven with the dummy from Klaus, as we were kind of talking about. I do agree it was a bit of a dummy, but I thought it was cool that St. Louis kind of, once they scored a goal, Dallas was forced to push again, right? They were forced to try to attack and get that goal back.
That was funny.
City was able to play their game again. And in a man up or 2 men up at this point?
One, because the second double yellow, and they ended up giving it to another player. So for a brief moment, they were down 2. And then I don't know if VAR looked at it, but they gave, I think it was Quignon the yellow instead of somebody else.
That makes more sense.
Farfan might have.
I was very confused in that whole situation, but it's
as was everybody in the stadium, because MLS doesn't announce anything that's going on to fans in the stadium.
They didn't. But I think City was able to kind of do what they wanted at that point. They were able to press, and it just looked like normal City at that point.
One thing I do want to say, sorry for cutting you off, Phil, is about the Thoresen goal. And I just want to reiterate, that's the goal that I meant about. It looked like Klaus had looked behind him because Leuven was prepping for the cross from really deep, from near midfield. He was prepping for the cross, and Klaus could tell it. And you could see this moment, and it's in the highlights that are posted around, that Klaus takes a quick turn back to see space, to see who's there. And the reason that I think it was a very intentional decoy is because Klaus is good at that kind of thing. Like, he is deceptively good with the ball at his feet, deceptively good at controlling on or off whatever he wants to do with the ball. He does it in training all the time with these little heel flicks that we see Gioacchini do a lot. Klaus does them a lot too in games, but he's so adept at controlling the ball, whether he wants to or let the ball do whatever it's going to do. And this was him knowing that there was space behind him that had opened up, and he was drawing in defenders with him in the box. That's just what Klaus does. It's one of those intangibles that Klaus offers in the game that does go along with the fact that we scored both of these goals after Klaus entered. He just garners more attention. He is that person in the league now who they know and respect him. So when he's in the game, he'll earn that respect and he'll earn that coverage. And it now allows players like Knut Thoresen to play off of him, find space, because he saw it too. As soon as he started running, he ran away from Klaus into the open space to receive the ball. I am almost as certain as I can be that Klaus intended to not touch the ball because he knew that Nukvi was behind him. He knew the space was behind him. And I also know that Nukvi intended to receive that ball every step of the way, because he didn't run to play the ball off of Klaus. He ran to play Leuven's cross.
Agree. And just to kind of expand on that, I think Thoresen was the perfect player for this kind of game situation, just because he is, in his past and his former teams, he is so good at capitalizing on those weird bouncing balls. He is able to be in the right place, look for a rebound, and just finish. The man has really good finishing skills. He finished this one with his left foot on a weird bounce at the far post. You could see he adjusted his whole body, he adjusted his foot angle, and was able to also be deceptive in the way he did those things and send it to the near post. The goalkeeper couldn't jump either way confidently because he did such a good with deceiving him. And it went right where he intended it to. And that's the stuff I notice with finishers, because I do think St. Louis, other than Klaus, and sometimes Gioacchini does some crazy stuff that I can't explain, but I think Nukvi is a consistently good finisher that we can count on if we can get him in the right place at the right time, which I'm not saying it's going to happen every time, but it did pay off in this way. And I truly think that's exactly the kind of thing that Lutz thought we needed, and I think that we got in Nukvi in that regard. So I wanted to say that. Stuart, any last thoughts on the game overall? I think we can each do one more kind of thought before we move on.
Just that I thought, of course, Berkey was great per usual, but if you're going to have to give up a howler, do it at the very, very end of a 2-0 game. I think he obviously felt worse than anyone to lose a clean sheet there, especially knowing that his back line had played so well and fought so hard that whole game. But No, just amazing game by Josh Yaro. I want to give him a shout out in particular.
Agree. Matt, any thoughts?
My last thing is this was the first MLS match where City had greater than 50% possession and won the game. They'd won previously with 50% exactly against the Portland Timbers. They won in the U.S. Open Cup with 52% possession against Omaha. But this was the one that it could have gotten away, and it did get away so many times. But I just got to give credit to the fact that we had 66% possession in this game, far and away the most we've had this year, and we actually won a game while doing that.
22 shots in this game, only 6 on goal, which is kind of we touched on all the reasons for this. The crosses thing was really cool, and Matt, I'm so glad that you said what you just said there, because I do think that's really cool to bring up, something that most people wouldn't have noticed. I just want to kind of reiterate that, you know, I think a lot of people are really upset with how City played in this game and really frustrated, and maybe a lot of those came during the game, which 110%, I feel you there. But, you know, I want to remind everyone, this team was built to press, to, you know, quick transitions, to be athletic, to turn over the ball and create chances in that way. It's just this roster is not built to possess the ball. And I think Carnell handled it really, really well. Yes, he's been given the tools by Lutz to do what he did today. And I do think those 2 new additions, who are the 2 goal scorers, were absolutely massive. Massive tools that Carnell was able to use in this game. Really helpful to get the win. But, you know, it's not a surprise that St. Louis struggled in the first half. And it's not a surprise that they still weren't able to break through with 3 subs, even though the adjustments I thought were perfect for what we had. Sometimes you just need a Klaus. Sometimes you need a DP who can do all the things that he does, who can draw more defenders and create space and opportunities for other guys. And that's just what we got. And that's what got us over the hump. And you know what, guys? It's MLS. That's how it works. That's what DPs are for, is to create excitement on and off the field. And Klaus delivered on that one. Leuven clearly has delivered this season. So I just want to encourage everyone, if you felt like this game was bad, well, yeah, this isn't what we were built for. But you know, they delivered anyway, everybody. And so in my opinion, I just want to say that I was proud of everybody. I'm proud of the adjustments, and I'm proud that they were able to rise above as they do over and over and over. They're first in the West, and it's not changing anytime soon, I don't think, everyone. So proud of these guys. Great 3 points against Dallas, who we lost to earlier this season. So that feels good. Yeah. Anything else before we move on? I think that's a good way to close it out. You're listening to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. We've got more news for you, and it's a fun one. It's not transfer season, but somehow we still have some fun news to talk about. Matt, you want to start us off with the loans? That's what I'm most excited to talk about.
Yeah, it's not incoming transfer season because the MLS incoming transfer window is long closed. But there are still moves that can be made, whether it's loaning domestically, whether it's selling off, loaning out. And we made 2 moves this week. St. Louis City 2 have loaned goalkeeper Eric Walker to Indy 11 of the USL Championship for the remainder of the season. This is an interesting move because I don't know the situation Indy 11 have. Maybe you guys do, or stay more plugged in with USL lately. But I know that Walker had even been struggling for time with City 2. It's a very crowded goalkeeping field. Christian Oliveras has 8 starts for City 2. Michael Creek has 7 starts. Eric Walker has 5 starts, and Ben Lunt has 4 starts. It's spread out all over the place. And Eric Walker, it's going to be great to see him get an opportunity to play a little more, presumably. Being a local guy from SLU, it's exciting that he's on City 2. It's exciting that we're giving him an opportunity and now to develop more, hopefully with more minutes.
We got a friend over at Indy 11. AJ Cochran's playing over there, so maybe we can try to get a hold of him. I think he'll give us that kind of information, and maybe we'll catch up with him. It's a special season for him, so there's a little hint at what you might get from us and AJ at the end of this season. I'm looking forward to it. Some more loan news, though. That's not the only one, Matt.
I would say the bigger one, though, came on Wednesday, August 30th, when it was announced that St. Louis City have loaned Danish midfielder Isak Jensen to Danish First Division Superliga club Viborg FF through June 2024. Now, this is the first division in Denmark, and so it says First Division Superliga. This is the top tier. Viborg finished 4th in the Superliga last year. So this is a quality club, and they're looking to give Isak Jensen minutes on the left side, it sounds like, from listening to their coach talk. This really sounded like this would be a good move, talking about playing in his natural position, their coach saying, we now think we have the necessary competition in the edge positions. And so it sounds like he'll be looked to at least compete or push for starting roles. It'll be fun to watch Viborg in this upcoming season because Isak Jensen is only 19 years old, and he is signed, if you count the option year, through 2027. This is a long-term commitment that St. Louis has made to Isak Jensen, and we know that he's seen a vast majority of his playing time with City 2, especially recently. So the competition that he's going to see in Denmark versus MLS Next Pro is going to be markedly better, and it will be exciting to follow him through June of next year. The other thing that this does is it frees up an international roster slot for the duration of his loan. And so we talk about Max Schneider being loaned to City 2. That frees up a spot. Now we have one that's freed up until essentially the next transfer window opens next summer for Isak Jensen.
Stuart, how do you feel about these loans? Any thoughts?
I think they're good. I mean, obviously, USL is a higher level than MLS Next Pro. Indy 11 have an injury with their starting goaltender, which nice. I think this loan was a sign it's worse than I think the fans expected. They do have 5 goalkeepers on the roster now, but I believe a couple of them are academy signings. So Walker will, in theory, be the number 2 goalie over there, but he'll get to train with a really good professional club. Yeah. So I think it's a positive thing. It also clears up the backlog with City 2. So one of those guys isn't, playing in UPSL, or, one of the UPSL guys might be able to get loaned or something like that. But I'm excited about Jensen's loan. Viborg, they actually nearly qualified for European play last year. They do like a weird playoff championship style thing in Denmark. They lost to Midtjylland.
Okay.
Who might know as the club that, DC United's old goalie. Who was he? He was with Memphis this year before he retired.
Darn it. Yeah.
Tim Howard.
No.
No, I can't believe I'm blanking. But former U.S. international. Yeah, it's bugging me. Anyways, that was the club he played for. But it'll be good for Jensen to kind of get more playing time, settle back into culture he's familiar with. I'm not convinced we'll see him again play for us, which is fine. If he lights it up over there and he gets attention at bigger clubs and he wants to stay in Europe, then we sell for a profit, and that's, I think, good business on our end.
It was Bill Hamid.
Yep.
Yes, Bill Hamid. Yeah. Oh man, what a fall.
That is not me just randomly remembering. That is me with my Google sleuthing skills.
Yeah, Memphis cut Hamid loose 2 weeks ago, I think. So he's a free agent technically, but I think he's bound to retire.
It was cool of him to kind of go down there and have some fun at the end. That's cool. I love these loans. It's really awesome. Walker hopefully can get a good experience in the championship, like you said, Stuart. And, it always felt like Jensen wasn't comfortable here. So it feels like I'm not saying he wasn't thriving because of it, but I think he's going to enjoy being home one more time and be ready to come back and really go at it. And he needed more playing time on a higher level. So this is definitely, like you said, better than Next Pro. It's not quite MLS, so maybe he'll find some good goal scoring form. You can't help but compare it to, I hope it's just going to be like what happened with Sam Adeniran. So, hopefully he'll come back here, get some time with City 2, score 1 million goals because it's too easy for him, and then move on up and do well with the senior team. And I love that he signed through 27. I forgot that, Matt. That's good stuff. So, 19-year-old on the up and up. Matt, you got more stuff for us here?
I got two players of note heading into the Sporting Kansas City game. Bradley Carnell basically said on Thursday's press conference that he gave the team a full bill of health. That was with the caveat of Nico Gioacchini, who is listed as questionable this week on the player availability report. He was seen training solo on Thursday, seen by me, Santi, and he was off working on his own. I thought at first that he had like a shoulder sling because he was off in the distance on the far end of the second training field. I think it was actually just the tracker that he had on, and it was just the fact that he was laboring, in my opinion, his right shoulder a little bit. Like I think when he was running and doing his drills, I noticed a noticeable swing in his left arm when he was making movements as opposed to his right, which is the shoulder that he hurt. We still don't know officially what injury he has, whether it's a sprain, dislocation, but Carnell had said as early as the beginning of the week that he was responding better to treatment and he was showing up better than what they had expected. And so he's listed as questionable. And Carnell said that he has some checks this afternoon, meaning Thursday. They're introducing him to some contact on Friday before assessing whether he can travel this weekend. Carnell did say, I'm optimistic he can travel. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on is, will Nico Gioacchini show up in some of these travel photos the team has and whether he'll be available in Kansas City. But we do know that Jake Nerwinski will not be available against Sporting Kansas City. Nerwinski obviously has kind of fallen behind Akil Watts in the depth chart. Akil having gone, having subbed out in the second half, you think that just opens the door for him to start and potentially play longer against Sporting Kansas City, but we will not have our backup right back at this point, Jake Nerwinski, against Sporting Kansas City due to yellow card accumulations, I believe, because if you remember against Orlando City, he not only picked up a yellow card that was suspending him for that, but then he went ahead and got the red card. Yeah. I think the red card was applied to SC Dallas and the yellow card suspension against Sporting Kansas City, but it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we won't have him. So opens this spot for another player to make the game day roster.
Interesting. You know what I forgot to ask you, Matt, before we move on? This is just going to be a fun one because it's that kind of show. So if that opens up a slot with the loan of Walker and Jensen is the main, Jensen is the one. So, fun conversation here. Who fills it? Do we leave it open? Is there a City 2 player? I asked a couple questions about who people thought City 2 players deserved a senior contract. What do you think?
I mean, City has never been good at letting us be correct with our guesses as far as who they're signing. I mean, you could say it opens.
It's never held me back from saying it.
No, but if you're looking for like an in-house guess, it opens the door for Michael Wenzel to be signed to a City contract. City also does have more than their allotted 8 international roster slots currently, even with Isak Jensen loaned out. So there's still some wiggle room they'll have to figure out as far as acquiring some because they typically 99% of the time last for a single year, right? So all the international slots we've acquired beyond 8, which is the allotted, were just for 23. We either get guys green cards or we need to acquire more, even with the Jensen loan. I think it does give more flexibility though, because these international slots are easy to come by. Lutz acquired 3 for next to nothing. But it's always good to have more flexibility on the international space. That is for sure.
Stuart, you want to weigh in on and who you would promote to the senior team if needed?
Wenzel's a great option, but I think we're pretty stacked at center backs right now. So I don't know.
We're on the 4 center backs.
We've done it before.
just play Wenzel up top.
He's got a good free kick, to be honest. So
I think we'll be seeing Wenzel next year with City, or at least he'll get his chance next year. I mean, Glover would obviously be a fun one. I know he's on a City contract. I mean, I'm always a sucker for one of the Armstrong brothers. I just think they're great guys in general, and I'd love to see them see some minutes at the end of the season. But no, I expect that we'll be surprised by whatever they choose because, like Matt said, we never quite know what they're gonna decide. But I'm actually gonna have to head out, guys. I got a baby to put down or check on. So thanks for having me on as always.
Night, Stu. Thanks for doing
You're the best,
this,
Stu.
Appreciate it.
See you this weekend.
Yep. See you in KC.
That's right.
Kansas, I mean.
Exactly.
KCK.
Oh, I love it.
Which have you seen the scarves that they have? just before we get into the preview of Sporting Kansas City. So they have these scarves that they put out that were like SKC versus STL. And at the top, it says, I think this is one of those marketing things they've been going with. It says 2 states, 1 city, which is just factually incorrect. Like, I lived in Kansas City for a period of time, and Kansas City, Kansas is 100% not Kansas City, Missouri, not just from a cultural economic perspective, but like the history of the cities is not the same. Like so for a club who is very adept at litigating trademarks and being very specific in certain things like that, it seems to me hilarious that they're so wildly inaccurate with what they print on their scarves.
Oh my gosh. It just feels like they can't get it right and stumbling over themselves for sure. I was about to say, I think they have 2 mayors for KCK and KCMO.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we can point fingers here in St. Louis about too many mayors inside our metro area. So here we go.
Everybody's got their own thing.
That's right. I did want to say before we move on that I think Johnny Klein is a great shout. That I think I see what Ostrak does and what Stroud does even sometimes. I'm like, I think Klein could do some of that, if not most of that. So
yeah,
that would be a fun one to see.
My mind was going towards the international slot angle of it, but I love Stu's Caden Glover. I love Johnny Klein. Johnny Klein is the one who's deserved it the most to me. Like Caden Glover's already on a contract. He already occupies a slot. We just got to bring him up to use him. I think Johnny Klein is the guy. And if anybody's proved themselves unequivocally, it would be Klein and Wenzel to me at City 2 this year.
Agree.
Batachi is getting there, but I mean, the consistent goal scoring and goal contributions from Klein is, I don't want to say it's like surprising because we all hoped, and I screamed in excitement for Johnny Klein to be drafted for a reason, but even I didn't figure he would have this much of an impact for City 2 to the point where he's pushed himself already to his limits of appearing for City. Now I think he's playing himself into a contract just as much as anybody could.
The Klein to Glover, cross goal thing could be a thing in 2 years. You know what I mean? It could be a constant thing in 2 years time. A lot can happen. Yeah, I would love it. So we did get one shout for Schneider. I just want to say that on Twitter. I asked that and someone also shouted out Schneider.
Schneider's another one like Glover, though, where he just has to be recalled. He already takes up a roster slot. So we just need to recall him and get him going because that's depth in the defensive midfield. That's Blom goes on national team duty. We have midweek matches. Schneider is the guy he's almost like the prototypical CDM that we've been missing throughout this year, where you look to somebody who can replace Blom.
Yeah.
Schneider doesn't have the same makeup and the same skill set as Blom. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the positional expertise that he can bring to that area. It's not fitting a round Vasilev into a square CDM. It's not trying to figure out guys who can cover. It's finding a guy that's his position.
Completely
and
agree.
That's Schneider to me.
Fun stuff, guys. Thanks for joining us. We're Flyover Footy. You're listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS. Thank you for joining us. We are going to get into Sporting Kansas City now. It's been fun to talk about the Dallas game, which I think we all had so much to say, and the news has been fun, but here's the bulk of what a lot of people come to Flyover for, and it is for getting you ready for game day on Saturdays, Wednesdays. We do the breakdowns on Monday with Flyover Fallout. So here we go. We're going to get you ready for Sporting Kansas City, and no better man to do it than Matt Baker. And he's right here, ready to talk about it. He's got a whole page full of notes here to break down. What you got for us, Matt?
We all know what happened with St. Louis midweek, but St. Louis City comes into this match first place in the West with 47 points. We've played 26 games, held a 15-9-2 record with 52 goals scored, 33 goals against, and a plus 19 goal differential. We are 5-6-1 away. And this is an away game officially, depending on how many fans travel. It may sound different, but it is an official away game. So we look to even our record there. The form for St. Louis City past few games is trending well. We won against FC Dallas at home 2-1 this week. We lost to Orlando City last week 2-1. But then before that, we defeated FC Austin 6-3 or Austin FC. And so we're riding high into this game. We pulled the 3 points we needed to for our form. We've had 7 clean sheets total this season, including the 4-0 win against Sporting Kansas City earlier this year. Juxtaposing that is Sporting Kansas City, who sits 11th place in the West, outside of playoff position as we speak. They only have 29 points compared to our 47 through the same number of games, 26. They have a 7-11-8 record. That's 7 wins, 11 losses, and 8 draws, because that's how MLS does it. 34 goals scored, 36 goals against, -2 goal differential. They are 6-5-2 at home. So it's not an overwhelmingly stellar record, but they are markedly better at home than they are away. I think beating Chivas in Leagues Cup at home was a little testament to that. But their form recently, they defeated the San Jose Earthquakes 3-0 last week. And before that, it was Leagues Cup, where they escaped their group stage after having drawn FC Cincinnati and beat Chivas 1-0. Then they lost the round of 16 match away, quote unquote, to Toluca 4-1, even though that was played at Children's Mercy Park. Sporting Kansas City has had a tale of 2 seasons, and it kind of, I've seen it bookend with St. Louis City in that crushing defeat at City Park for them. They went winless in their first 10 matches, if you remember. It was quite comical when they came into St. Louis and they had this awful streak. First 10 matches of the season, when we beat them 4-0 in May, they were completely winless. It was laughable. Since then, though, they've gone 5-3-4. So nothing overwhelmingly over the top, but still a winning record, and they're starting to claw their way back into playoff position. MLS makes it easy with 9 teams, and they're getting there. On the season, we have 7 clean sheets. They have 6. Here's the interesting thing about their clean sheets. 3 of those were 0-0 draws, and the other 3 were 3-0 wins. In fact, 5 of their 7 wins this year have been by 3 or more goals. So if and when they win, they usually win big. This is something to keep an eye out for me this weekend. Is can St. Louis's defense mitigate the goal scoring prowess that Sporting Kansas City usually has when they win?
It's big stuff there. I'm surprised they're a win big kind of team. Usually I think of pressing teams like St. Louis is like that, clearly, but
when it rains, it pours for them.
Yeah, I guess something to look out for sure. You want to move on to player availability?
Yeah, they're a mostly healthy team. They have 2 players, I believe, that are questionable at last I saw earlier today. Gadi Kinda, one of their designated players. He was a late scratching at San Jose. Peter Vermes, their coach and sporting director, said that he will be available against St. Louis, but despite the fact of being back in training this week, he's still on their player availability report as questionable, as is Johnny Russell, who picked up an ankle injury after the San Jose match. Post-game of San Jose, he said he was quoted as saying, "It's pretty sore right now, but it's still fresh. I'll get treatment on it now to try and stop the swelling and get it under control and take it from there. We'll reassess in the next couple of days and see what the damage is." He has not been training all week with Sporting Kansas City. And so showing up in the questionable report, I've heard such things from analysts or media in in Kansas by saying that if it was any other game or any other person, they would expect Russell would sit, or that type of player would sit. But being Johnny Russell, being St. Louis, it seems like they're trying to talk him up or talk him as the bleeding sock kind of guy who's willing to fight through the pain to beat the dogged rivals.
Big time Scottish energy coming from that man, rightfully so. He is that. If you hate SKC, you still gotta love Russell. He's such a cool player. Matt, let's move on to the big stories, things to look out for this week.
Yeah, I have 3 kind of fun stories and narratives to watch, and they're mostly from the St. Louis side, to be honest. This is the second of third match against Sporting Kansas City, so keep in mind the big picture that we had 3 games scheduled. This is the only match that we'll play in Kansas, and so the first game we all know was a 4-0 win by St. Louis, and that was a very unique kind of turnaround game. If you remember the week leading up to that, it wasn't just the hype and the hoopla of the soccer capital, the soccer city, the Missouri History Museum, the billboards all over I-70 and Highway 40. It was St. Louis needing a turnaround. They needed a bounce back. They had suffered their first losing streak. The left back situation was perilous. It was Kyle Hebert's first match in at left back, and we were trying to find ourselves. And in this match, we find ourselves also without Klaus, because this occurred May 20th and we lost Klaus April 22nd. We still had not found ourselves without Klaus. This was the game where Indiana Vassilev featured as the number 10 for the first time and scored 2 goals himself. We had a goal by Nico Gioacchini and a PK by Edu Leuven that started all of it. So in that game, if you remember the Dallas stats I had, where it was like 66% possession on the St. Louis side against Dallas, this match against Sporting Kansas City, the last time, played exactly as we expected, with the 67% possession by Kansas City. The shots on target, they were all pretty much even. But this in and of itself, the fact that this is the second of three matches, knowing the styles of play by these two teams, I think it definitely has the makings and potentiality on the field for an intense rivalry, given how the expectations coming into that match and the trash talk between fans was kind of at an all-time high that we've seen so far, because we wanted it so bad. And we had heard from their players, from their media, saying the players really aren't treating this as much of a rivalry. They weren't there yet. And juxtaposing to our players, where pregame, he was alluding to it, Indiana Vassilev. Postgame, he straight out said, we heard how much our fans didn't like this team and wanted this, and we channeled that. So that's the type of inward channeling that our team did from what our fan base was sending across. I think that energy is there. The frustrating thing to me is that we only have 2 or 3 days to focus on this match, right? Because of the FC Dallas midweek, the full week's hoopla isn't there like it was before. And so we are now at the point where we're talking about, is 60% of Children's Mercy going to be City Red? How many thousands of St. Louis fans are going just beyond the away supporter section that is expected to have 500 or so tickets? And so all of these different intangibles going into it. We have Sporting Kansas City rounding into a better form, coming off of a big win against San Jose. St. Louis coming off a big win midweek against FC Dallas. Like, who's going to give in this match? And not even getting into the styles yet, which is very fascinating to me. It's this makings of a rivalry. It's the second match. Are we going to see the need for a rubber match to occur in September, or are we going to go for the clean sweep? Like, these are some of the fun stories that I like to follow. And it really does get amplified by how well is St. Louis going to be traveling. Sporting Kansas City fans traveled decently well, but it wasn't overwhelming given the fact that we saw Club America and what that stadium looked like. That's the bar for me at City Park is Club America. Sporting Kansas City doesn't even approach that level. So I'm interested in what we can do over there.
That's a good comp, actually. That would be really fun to kind of embarrass them in that way, because I was embarrassed about the Club America thing, even though that's just the nature of the competition there. But I want to just reiterate that Indy quote is my favorite of the year. I think he said a little something closer to something like St. Louis hates KC, so I do too. It's just like vibes of like that best friend who's got your back no matter what. He doesn't care. He's like, you hate that guy? I hate that guy too. Let's go. So I love that. And, there's no Reddit rumor that's too good or bad for this show. It's a fun one, right? 67% of tickets sold belong to City. I think Stuart said something like that doesn't even include the KC residents that are from St. Louis, expats, he put it.
Looking at like SeatGeek addresses and data of who's buying these tickets on that. There's a lot that's going to be interesting to see come game day.
Yep. Good stuff. But I also liked what you said there, that they've only got 3 days to prepare. But I think it's, I love that that Kansas City plays right into our hands. Like, they possess the ball. That 67-33 possession is like, okay, thank you. This is what we want. So I think it's a bit of a relief after what happened in Dallas, like having to play way outside their comfort zone, City, that is. That this is probably, unless KC makes massive adjustments, this is probably going to be more in their wheelhouse. So I look forward to them looking comfortable on the field.
Yeah, and when we start to talk about our starting lineup predictions later on as we finish up, some of the key, I think, player stats, or at least player relationship stats that are really interesting that I've been following, are how well are some of our players performing when they're paired together as far as the standings and the wins losses go. And so I posted this on Twitter earlier today, but when in games where Akil Watts starts the game at right back, Josh Yarrow starts the game at center back, and AZ Jackson starts the game as our 10, our attacking midfielder, we are now 6-0. After winning against FC Dallas, we kept that streak alive. Sam Adeniran, he was in for a game we lost against Orlando, so he brings it down a little bit, but still Sam's pretty high with that group. That group all started with the San Jose Earthquakes game, where it was supposed to be an away rotation, and they made the splash they needed to stay in the lineup. And that's why, even up till now, we're a month and a half later, almost 2 months, Akil Watts, Josh Yaro, AZ Jackson, and basically Sam Adeniran are all mainstays in our starting lineup now. And it has snowballed. That's the kind of effect that these players can have when they're successful. And speaking of success, Jabulu Blom by himself, we are 10-2-1 when he starts. This is the difference maker. The guy who's 10-2-1 when he starts, and he plays the important role of the central defensive midfield. Difference maker, unequivocally. It gets really interesting, though, when you add Tim Parker to the equation, because in games where Jabulu Blom and Tim Parker have started together, we are 10-1-1. There's one game in there where Parker didn't start. I think he was suspended, that Blom did, and we ended up losing. Add in Edu Leuven to that equation, where Parker, Leuven, and Blom start together. We're 7-0-1, the one being the Galaxy draw. 7 wins, no losses, 1 draw when Blom, Parker, and Leuven all start together.
That's good stuff. I want to say that Blom, I love that you put that in there, the 10-2-1 when he starts. I think that's massive. He's looking weird the last few weeks. I don't know if you feel that way, but he's having a lot of giveaways. I know he didn't get called up to the South African team on this last call up.
Yeah.
I don't think that has anything to do with it. I wasn't trying to imply that, but man, he looks weird. He doesn't look super confident. Every once in a while, he gets to do what he's good at, and he crushes it, right? On a counter, or it's just a loose ball, and he's able to get it and hold on to it. And he looks like a normal Jabulu Blom in those moments. But, man, something's up with that guy. I've been watching him. I hope he gets a nice, solid game here in SKC for a little bit of confidence. We've been talking a lot, Matt. I think we should maybe choose 1 or 2 more things before we kind of do our predictions, because we have a lot of questions relating to that prediction.
I want to go into the style. I think that we know a lot about the key players for Sporting Kansas City: Alan Pulido, Daniel Saloy, Eric Tommy, Johnny Russell, Gadi Kinda. We got designated players. We've got 10 goal scorer in Pulido. I mean, these guys they're names that we know in St. Louis, and we'll keep an eye out for in their attack. But I alluded to the styles and how they seem to align with each other. The way that the first game went, where Sporting Kansas City had 67% possession, St. Louis had 33%. This is how this game is probably going to go. And I asked Bradley Carnell in the press conference on Thursday about that, about how the styles, it's not so much concerned about sticking to your principles, because Sporting Kansas City is they're okay with St. Louis sticking to their principles and trying to wear themselves out and attack and be fearless and ferocious and push themselves at each opportunity, because Sporting Kansas City will possess until the end of time, and they're fine with that. They're okay working the ball around. They feel confident in their ability to control the ball. They have some record-setting passes per sequence. I think they've set the record in the league for the most 10-plus passing sequence games. So they're willing to just pass the ball, switch the ball, move the ball around with short opportunities. This is their game, and St. Louis is the complete opposite. Yeah. Some of the stats that I love to use is that St. Louis is the most direct and has the second fewest passes per sequence. Kansas City is on the opposite end, near Seattle and Columbus. They've got the 8th slowest offense in direct speed. They got the 4th most passes per sequence overall. In sequence time, St. Louis is second fastest, while Sporting Kansas City is the 4th most. They've got one of the longest sequences on average. And that goes to Sporting controlling over 50% of the possession through their entire defensive half and on both wings as well. So if you're talking about where they're most dangerous and where they like to control the ball, it is over 50% possession throughout their entire defensive half, as well as on both wings. They cede control within the channels less than 50%. And for St. Louis, it's the exact opposite. St. Louis only has more than 50% possession within the channels in their defensive half, and they cede possession everywhere else. These are complete opposite play styles, complete opposite portions of the field. And just like the first game, I think this is going to be a battle of the efficiency and the efficacy, as opposed to which style is going to win out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to add to that, the stat that stood out to me is, Peter Vermes still makes them play Peter Vermes ball. So they're very good at intercepting the ball. Yep. And early in the season, that was something that really got to City. I think they've improved on countering that kind of ability. But SKC can get away with the style they perform at times just from that alone. So something to watch.
And they do try to wear out their opponents. You're right. I mean, they will do that. They'll play Vermes ball, and it was criticized at the beginning of the year when they were off to such a slow start, and there was the Vermes out campaigns were being had, and the fans were writing letters, and their supporter groups were sending posts on social media saying we need to do better. But they have done a little better, to the point where Vermes' job is safe, as far as I could tell.
Yeah.
But the quote that he had recently, it's stuck with me because of the wrinkle that it could throw into this entire game plan. So there's the moments in the game that are made, and Vermes' quote recently said when they've had success, he said, quote, "You start moving the ball and you're keeping the ball, and all of a sudden you get a level of confidence, and then you start to play very instinctively, as opposed to thinking about, hey, I've got to be there, I've got to be here. You just have to start to move into the places based on your spatial awareness of the game." And then that led into, I mentioned the Chivas game where they beat Chivas 1-0 in Leagues Cup. There was an interesting kind of quote that I think is going to be important for players like Joachim Nilsson, Tim Parker, and Josh Arrow to keep in mind, where Peter Vermes said there are other times when you're in the back and it's not on. And when you're trying to come out, you can't play. Sometimes, like I said, you just got to put it out over the top. You got to go counter press them and see if you can use field position. It's almost like you're playing like the NFL at that moment. It's all about field position with the ball. So this whole idea of Sporting Kansas City possessing is with the very keen eye of progressing the ball. Like, they're not just going to possess the ball in their defensive third and just deal with it back and forth. They're going to progress the ball very slowly, methodically. And what Vermes is saying here is, if that's not working, sometimes you do have to send in. You have to look for the long run. So your attackers will be in that position where they might start at midfield and they make a run. So we're going to see some of those opportunities just as much as we're going to see that continuous possession.
Yeah, and one thing I saw, another stat, was they do possess the ball, millions of passes, but they pass much more. They might rank much higher in passes in the attacking zone than passes in their own zone as far as MLS comps. So that shows that, they're not just passing it around. They have a purpose to what they're doing. And another great quotes, Matt, of Carnell, and another one I saw one of you guys post was that, he's like, you'll see Kansas City pass it all over the field for 2 minutes and it'll just somehow end in a Johnny Russell goal. So it's it's a purposeful thing. It does work. I don't think it'll work against City. So I hope that plays out that way. We'll see.
It's the fullbacks or wingbacks, however they end up looking. That's going to be key, is the fact that Sporting Kansas City loves to control possession down the wings. That's going to put pressure on our fullbacks. And I can see a situation where Kyle Hebert starts because they want to give additional defensive help on that left side in the wing. But also, I think even if we have Marcanic and Watts, or however that ends up looking, that's going to be some areas of the game to really pay attention to, are their offensive wingers, our defensive fullbacks, and who wins those battles when the ball is sent long. Because otherwise, I'm looking at some of these midfield positions and some of our attacking wide mids to really be strong with their push points and prevent the ball from being progressed in this methodical way that Sporting Kansas City likes to.
Good stuff, Matt. That leads us right into the next point. We got questions from STL City Italians, and Jonathan Himmelberg asked a question on, it looks like, YouTube, actually. So we'll combine these kind of into one as we give our guesses of the formation of the game. STL City Italians, did this game answer any questions about our starting 11? What our starting 11 will be moving forward? Can we get a solid breakdown on playoff roster in the upcoming podcast? We'll probably touch on playoffs. We're going another time. We're going a little long here, but Jonathan asks, how are you guys feeling about Hebert at this point? Do you think the left back starting spot is up for grabs for Marcanic? Great question. I think that's very relevant to what we're about to do here.
Yeah, I do think it's up for grabs. I don't think Kyle Hebert's done anything in the last 2 or 3 games to cement his role as our left back, and it's a crowded center back spot. So it's hard to say with certainty that he is put in the lineup in pen every single game, especially when you look at, and it's the most overblown type of example, but this FC Dallas game where they had the lowest of blocks and you had to find a way to break through. Well, a defensive minded left back isn't going to serve you much of a purpose in that. You look at what Sporting Kansas City typically does with their possession-based offense, and yeah, they're going to progress it a little more, and they're not going to drop back in as low of a block. But if you're looking to make the kind of offensive maneuvering that we did in the first game with Indiana Vassilev, Nico Gioacchini, all the success that we had in progressing the ball quickly, it's easy to see how valuable an attacking-minded fullback can be. The trick, like I said, though, is going to be in this game here, Sporting Kansas City. Tactically, can you afford to do that with your fullbacks, knowing that the wingers of Sporting Kansas City can be so deadly in controlling the ball and creating space to send in crosses or to create chances that start from the wide areas? And so what are you going to, when you stick to your principles, what's really going to give here? Are you going to go kind of old school Carnell earlier this year with that 90 minutes of an attacking minded left back in addition to the right back? Or are you going to go with something that has worked more often than not? And that's Kyle Hiebert's defensive minded left back. Because remember, I mentioned Kyle Hiebert, he started at left back and he hasn't relinquished it since the first Sporting Kansas City game. It would be a measure of poetry if he relinquished it at the second one. But the run that we've been on since Sporting Kansas City has enabled us to continue to be in first place, where we had fallen out of first place at that point after our 3-game losing streak, and we hadn't been able to figure things out. He helped stabilize our back line. And we could be at a point where we're in a different place offensively, that we need a different look, and we need to start stringing together more games with open goals or open play goals. So Marcanic, to me, deserves every opportunity, including spot starts here and there. So just like we had with Josh Yaro and Akil Watts and AZ and Sam, give him an opportunity to start, whether it's against Sporting Kansas City or the LA Galaxy, and see if he can take it. Because if he does and it's effective, then it's his.
Yeah, we're mind melding, Matt, because I was thinking the same thing about Hiebert. I saw that question. I was like, do we pull Hiebert when it's been working against Sporting Kansas City? And I don't think so. And something else to add to that I don't think we can bet on a change quite yet, because we haven't seen Marcanic forced to defend a full 90. And that's, in whatever system we have, that's where our fullbacks get absolutely left for dead. We've even seen, as good as Watts has been, he is absolutely, the team has given up a goal when Watts was way upfield in 2 games ago. And it was bad to see. But I think what is being asked of our fullbacks, that's the challenge. And can Marcanic do that? We see here Bilbo Swaggins has commented here and there, and he said that he remembered seeing Marcanic whiff pretty bad on a run from Pomacall. And I think he did. I think he stepped right around him. Yeah. That happens. That's just one thing. But what does he do in a 90-minute game?
And that's the question, right? And that's part of why I want to see him out there. I want to see him given an opportunity because of what he's shown us in the past couple of games offensively. To me, that offensive mindedness is incredibly valuable from the left side. We've been missing it, and it's kind of allowed some vulnerabilities to develop there on the left as far as our tactical abilities go. And so can Marcanic be defensively sound to the point where you trust him as a two-way player? If he isn't given the opportunity when he's shown that he can be an offensive player, then I don't know what we're doing with him. He deserves that opportunity, whether it's now or in the next game or two. And maybe the fixture congestion that's about to come up when we return home against LAFC next month is the time to do it. But there has to be a time to let him shine.
I think that's the blessing in compared to the curse. The potential curse is, how many games away from the playoffs are we here? What is it, 8, 7? And this is when we're going to start experimenting with a new attacking left back. That sounds pretty scary to me. But if we have congestion, if we're an athletic squad that needs to rotate, then why not? That's your perfect excuse to give it a shot. I was talking to my brother-in-law, who's an SKC fan, lives in Kansas City. He's like, we're piled up with games in the beginning of the season. St. Louis is piled up with games at the end, and we'll see what kind of losing streaks you guys get. He was a little bitter after that last game. But it's a good point, and maybe we can use it to our advantage here.
Yep.
Let's just give our lineups and predictions and get out of here, Matt. Is that okay?
Yeah, one thing I do want to say, because we're touching on Kyle Hiebert a bit in the Sporting Kansas City game, I'm looking at the stats of Kyle Hiebert's throughout the season as far as when we've won, when we've lost, and we've drawn since he's played. And since that Sporting Kansas City game where he's debuted as left back, games where he's featured, we have gone 9, 3, and 1. 9 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw in games that he's featured. This does include the Nashville game where he was all over the place and had a terrible time at right back. Before that, where Kyle Hiebert was featured at center back, that included the Klaus the Klaus run, the run of form of like Minnesota, Seattle, and the Rapids, games where Kyle Hiebert featured at center back, we were 5-4-1. So winning record, but 9-3-1 with Hiebert at left back. That's one of 11 players. I'm not saying correlation equals causation, but it's just an interesting note.
Good stuff. All right, Matt, you go first because I'm going to choose mine based on what you pick.
Yeah, I almost regret what I put, but I'm going to stick to it. Why not? I mentioned Marcanic, and so I have Berkey, Marcanic, Parker, Nilsson, and Watts, Jabulu Blom, Edu Leuven, and then I'm going with Nukvi Thorson getting his first start, Indiana Vasilev, and AZ Jackson. I think Thorson's going to start up top. No, I've got Klaus in there too. There's 11 players.
Oh, Klaus is starting, huh?
Let me redo this. I'm going to go with Berkey, Marcanic, Parker, Nilsson, Watts. And the midfield is Jabulu Blom, Edu Leuven. And then we've got Thorson kind of on the left, AZ in the middle, Indy on the right, and Klaus up top returning for his first start.
Okay, 4-2-3-1. All right.
Yeah.
Here's the hard thing is I want to do a 5-man back line just for the fun of it.
Do it.
And it's hard for me to pick the attacker. So let's see what I can do on the fly here. So I will also start Marcanic, but I will put in Hiebert. I think Nilsson starts this one. I don't know if he was 90 minutes ready to go 3 times in a week, but he's had since last Saturday to rest. So Hiebert, Nilsson, Parker, of course, and then Watts on the right. Now, here's the weird part is I got to pick out. So we'll say Leuven and Blom for sure together. And then how do I get Azil Jackson into this? I think it'll be Big Sam. And then let's just say underneath. This is just for fun because I love this idea. Let's say I'm going to say Sam starts because I think Klaus will be the super sub again. And then I'm going to put Jackson and Thorson underneath him. So it'll be like a Christmas tree, like a 5. Is that enough players?
5-3-2-1.
So add Indiana in the midfield. So it'll be 3. Blom, Leuven, Indiana. So it'll be 5-3-2-1. Yep, Christmas tree.
That's too many players.
No, you're right. 5-3-2.
Say the names again.
I did it right the first time. So
Okay.
Don't add Indy. So it'll be 3 center backs, Watson, Marcanic on the wings. So in between them will be Leuven and Blom. And then I'll put Thorson and Jackson underneath Sam to start.
I like that.
So
and I think
3-4-2-1.
I like that. I'm worried about what our right side would look like. And I would wonder if that would end up looking kind of like a 4-4-2 just with the personnel. But if you're talking about an actual 3 center back, I wonder what we do on our right side there. I'd be excited to see those people on the field at the same time though.
Yeah. And at the end, it was looking something like that because we did not have wide attackers. It was, a striker and then attacking mids doing, I'm not sure what, but
yeah, width is the thing, especially defensively, that I worry about in this game. And I want to make sure that we have, so like a 4-4-2 diamond, I don't really want to see as much, but I am very interested to see if our formation continues to be one way defensively and then shift another way offensively, which it has done lately with Hiebert at left back. So if Marcanic actually does start, I kind of see us being a little more normalized in that way, like we were earlier in the season. But either way, I mean, this just underscores, Phil, how many options we have with the types of players and the versatility that we have. It's insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, the most fun there is just like, what would our defense look like with Parker, Nilsson, and Hiebert all playing center back roles? It'd be fun.
Well, we still haven't seen the lineup yet of Berkey, Parker, Blom, Leuven, and Klaus. Like that's our theoretical top choice spine. And we still haven't seen that yet.
And I'd throw Nilsson in there too.
Nilsson, yes. I always miss one. Parker, Nilsson, Blom, Leuven, and Klaus.
It'd be fun. We'll get it. Maybe we'll get it.
Here's hoping.
All right. Do we do scores? What do you think?
I've got written down 3-0. I mean, it's
nice.
I think we run it against them, and the only reason it's 3 is because they shaved off a point because it's their home stadium.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. 3-1 is what I would guess. I think they'll get 1 at home. because it is, it is still their home, and they got good crowds normally. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. That's it from us. Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for sending your questions. If you can subscribe, and send us a review, it does help us a lot. I know it's that thing that we got to say, but we don't have ads, so deal with that. Okay. Enjoy it while you can. Thanks everyone again for listening. It's Matt Baker. I'm Phil Grooms. We'll talk to you next time.
Go City.